There's a stretch of country road in Kent where the night once stopped dead. It was just before Christmas in 1971 when something strange appeared above the fields near the village of Shorne. A glowing light, then two, then three. Silent, motionless, and unnervingly close to the ground. A local farmer said they were watching him. A couple driving past had their car shut down. Radios went quiet, dogs barked at nothing, and when people phoned the RAF to ask what was in the sky, they were told very clearly that nothing had been detected. But for a village like Shorne, where nothing much ever happened, this was not nothing. And more than 50 years later, some are still asking what really came over the fields that night. You're listening to the Cherrywood Conspiracy Files, brought to you by Simon and Rachel from the Cherrywood Podcast. They say Kent is the Garden of England, but sometimes the garden gets visitors, and not all of them arrive by road. In December 1971, Shorne was a sleepy rural village not far from Gravesend. It had its farms, its pub, a couple of shops, and that was about it. The kind of place where news travels by word of mouth, and where most of the excitement came from whether or not the post turned up late. But just after sunset on Sunday the 12th of December, that changed. George Watkins had been farming in Shorne all his life. He wasn't the kind of man given to nonsense. He wore the same coat every winter, used the same old tractor he'd bought in 1962, and knew the layout of his fields better than his own front room. On that Sunday evening, George was doing his usual livestock check. The air was still, no wind, a damp, heavy cold that clung to your coat. George guided his tractor across the field towards the far fence line when, without warning, the engine simply stopped. No chug, no splutter, no mechanical cough, just stopped. He tried the ignition, nothing, not even the dashboard light. George climbed down to check the battery and cables, and that's when he noticed the light. Not one, but three. Bright white orbs hovering maybe 200 feet away, low over the field. They didn't flicker, they didn't move, they just hovered. Each had a bluish halo around them, as if the air itself was glowing. George stood staring, one gloved hand still resting on the cold bonnet of his tractor. Later, he'd tell his wife that he felt something, some presence, not malevolent, but powerful, watching him, assessing. And then the lights slowly drifted sideways, silently, behind a copse of trees, and were gone. Within moments, the tractor started again, as if nothing had happened. He told no one that night, not even his son. But he wasn't the only one. Roughly 20 minutes later, a young couple driving through Shorne along Brewers Road had their own encounter. Their names weren't recorded publicly, but their account was shared anonymously with local radio some weeks later. They were heading to visit the woman's parents in Hyam when the car headlights began to dim. The radio hissed, cut out, and the engine juddered. The man thought he'd stalled it, but the woman screamed before he could restart it. Through the windscreen, just above the hedge line to their left, were two lights. Not aircraft lights, not car lights, pure white and perfectly still. No blinking, no sound, just suspended there, like searchlights frozen mid-beam. The man turned the key again and again, and on the fourth try, the engine roared back to life. But by the time he looked up, the lights were gone. They drove on in silence for the next 5 minutes, shaken. They didn't talk about it until hours later. According to the woman's statement, "I don't know what it was, but it wasn't anything normal. That I know for sure." Within a day, more stories emerged. A pub landlord at the Seaho claimed the lights in his bar flickered wildly just before last orders. A regular joked it was the brewery's fault, until his dog started barking at the window. Barking, growling, pacing back and forth for a full 10 minutes. But when the landlord went out to check, nothing. Not a soul in sight. Just the still December night. The next morning, phones in the area went down for about 20 minutes. No real explanation. BT said it was a local maintenance fault, but the timing didn't sit well with residents, especially not those who had seen the lights or felt something else. One woman, who lived at small cottage backing onto the farmland, wrote a letter to the Gravesend Reporter a week later. It was never published, but decades later her grandson shared a copy online. In it, she wrote, "Everything in the house stopped. The clocks, the electric fire, my kettle had just boiled and then the power went. I looked outside and saw a glow behind the trees. I didn't see anything directly, but I felt cold. Not temperature cold, spine cold. Like something was very wrong." The RAF at Manston airfield was contacted by several villagers. Each time they reportedly gave the same response. No aircraft in the area, no radar anomalies, no cause for concern. One man who called twice says he was told, "You must have seen Venus." But here's the strange part. An anonymous letter arrived at the local paper a few days later, postmarked from Canterbury. It claimed that RAF jets had been scrambled from Manston that night, but were recalled mid-air by higher command. The letter said, "The official response will be silence. That's all they're allowed to give." That letter was handed to police, but nothing came of it. No author was ever found. And as quickly as it began, the whole thing was swept under the rug. George Watkins never spoke to journalists. He told the story only once, to his daughter, and then sealed it away. But she kept his notes. Inside a folder marked December 1971 were sketches, diagrams, descriptions of what he saw and what he felt. One note reads, "They came without sound, left without trace, but they were real." Another, just 3 words, "Not of here." Those papers were still in the family's possession decades later. His grandson, interviewed privately in the late 2000s, said, "He wasn't the type to make up stories. He just saw what he saw, and it changed him." By January, official interest had gone cold. The Ministry of Defense never acknowledged anything beyond atmospheric misidentification. Locals who pushed for more were met with silence or polite brush-offs. But the stories never went away. And some say that even now, on a still December night in Shorne, if you stand in the right field, you might see them again.
So what exactly happened in Shorne that night? The official explanation at the time was simple: nothing. Or more precisely, a combination of natural causes and mistaken sightings. Weather phenomena, Venus, overactive imaginations during the long winter dark. But there are people who never accepted that. One theory is that the lights were part of a military test. Some locals believed it was related to RAF Manston or even a secret US Air Force experiment. The sudden power failures, the radio silence, and the RAF's strangely flat denials, they all fed the idea that something was being tested above the Kent countryside, and whatever it was, it didn't belong in the airspace. But if it was military, why over farmland in Kent? Why not over an isolated range? Why the lack of any aircraft noise? Even military drones in the early 70s weren't capable of that kind of silent hovering. And why would a local farmer's tractor, decades old, no electronics, be affected? Another theory goes further, that the lights were not from this earth. The way they moved, the precision of their stillness, the complete silence, these are details that crop up in UFO reports across the world. Shorne's incident has similarities with the Rendlesham Forest case, which happened just 9 years later. The difference is, Shorne never made headlines. Then there's the anonymous letter, the one claiming jets were scrambled and recalled. That sounds like classic UFO cover-up territory, the kind of claim that gets buried, dismissed as crank mail, but which echoes stories from other parts of the UK and beyond. Some believe that letter was written by a whistleblower inside Manston, frustrated by orders to deny what really happened. Others think it was planted, a red herring, to muddy the waters. There's also a more localized theory that the incident was something environmental, something geological. Kent has a long and complex history of underground activity, fault lines, mining tunnels. Some suggest electromagnetic interference caused by subterranean movement could explain the power failures. But that doesn't explain the lights in the sky. or why they return to the same spots. And then, of course, there are the questions that no theory fully answers. Why did George Watkins never return to that field after dark? Why did the car stall just at that moment, just in that place? And why did two separate witnesses describe the same type of light? Why would the Ministry of Defense so quickly brush it off and then lock the case away? What about the dog barking furiously at a window no one was looking out of? What about the woman who felt that kind of cold that doesn't come from the weather? And what about the drawing that still hangs in George's old barn, quietly aging, but never fading? If nothing happened, then why do so many people still remember something? And maybe the biggest question of all, why does no one talk about Shorne when they talk about UFOs in Britain? Is it just that the story slipped through the cracks, or was it gently buried? Or maybe, just maybe, that December night wasn't meant for anyone beyond Shorne to know about. So if you're ever driving through Kent, and you pass the old road between Cobham and Shorne after dark, glance over at the fields, the ones just past the bend where the trees dip low. If the night is still enough and the sky is clear, you might see them. 3 lights, silent and watching. And if you do, don't stop. This episode of the Cherrywood Conspiracy Files was researched and presented by the Cherrywood team. All content is speculative and based on witness accounts, historical records, and publicly available information. No conclusions are drawn and no claims are made. We simply ask the questions and let you decide. For more strange tales, eerie encounters, and hidden histories, subscribe to the Cherrywood Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your fix. New episodes every Friday. And if you've seen something out there in the dark, we want to hear about it. Thanks for listening. Stay curious and keep watching the skies.
Club Awesome, for autistic children and their families, a place where everyone belongs and fun knows no age limit.
Today's sponsors are De Medici Associates, chartered structural and civil engineers.
Based in the UK with a worldwide reach.
Visit their website on demediciassociates.com.
Right at Home Medway, providers of safe and trusted quality care for adults in the comfort of their own home. Whether you need companionship, medication assistance, personal care, living care or more, we've got you covered. Visit rightathome.co.uk/medway or call them on 01634 979 000. Are you looking for a cleaning or facilities management? Clearwater Kent is your trusted local expert. From roofs and driveway cleaning to fully facilitated management, they're a fully licensed, award-winning business that you can count on. Visit clearwaterkent.co.uk or call 01634 681 885.
Need stunning video or photography for your big day or even your business? Cherrywood Production delivers award-winning results with a personal touch. From weddings to promotional content, we turn your vision into reality. Visit cherrywoodpro.com today. Your memories, our passion. Put your business in front of 30,000 new customers with the Hindsight Directory. This A5 full-colour magazine is delivered by Royal Mail to Maidstone, Gravesend, Medway and Bromley, with more areas to come. Visit hindsightdirectory.co.uk.
New Digital, helping businesses build their online presence with web design, SEO, Google Ads and social media. Get 10% off when you quote Cherrywood today. Visit their website at nudigitalera.co.uk.